And I had a coach recently, a part of his coaching, he would ask, like, who are you? Who would you say that you are? And I said, if you had asked me that 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, I still would not know. Voiceover has shown me and taught me who I am and who I've always been. God already knew, he's the author and the finisher of our faith. So he already knows, and I just believe that everything that I've been through, as you were just saying, speaks to the voice that I have.
No human being can fathom what God has prepared for those who love Him. Seen, heard, imagined.
This episode holds sacred but emotionally heavy themes. For that reason, we've chosen to split this conversation into 2 parts to give you space to pause, process, and return when you're ready. Please listen with care and pause whenever your spirit needs rest. Welcome back. So today I wanted to talk about a gift that God has given most of us, and that's the gift of our voice. And to help me talk through this today, I have my very good friend, Marian Mills. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Marian, you are an award-winning voiceover artist based in Virginia, known for her rich, resonant voice and emotionally grounded performances. And you recently voiced the short film, We No Longer Have to Choose, produced by 10 by 10 Studios, which earned a 2025 Gold Telly Award for branded content in sports. You are an Army veteran with a background in social work, and you're deeply passionate about mental health advocacy. Your lived experiences lend rare authenticity and emotional depth to every role that you take on. You are described as having a voice that is deep yet gentle, with calm gravitas. Marian, you draw listeners in with your storytelling prowess. Welcome to Seen, Heard, Imagined.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations to your podcast. I love it.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for listening, and thanks for just being a guest today too. It's been
Absolutely.
interesting getting some voice talent in here. I mean, I guess it's no surprise. That's what a great deal of my network is, right?
Right.
A lot of the people I
Mhm.
know. But I think it's just so fitting. And also to talk about the gift of our voice, it's so fitting to have this conversation with
Yeah.
a fellow voice talent. So I appreciate this. I
Oh, yeah.
wanted to kind of start with when you were younger, because I don't know about you. I was a shy child. I went kind of through these like little goofy stages in life, being really silly and maybe a little bit of boisterous in class, but it didn't
Yes.
last very long. I'm pretty much an introvert. I'm quiet. I'm shy. Like you would have to
Yes.
initiate with me before I initiate with you.
Mhm.
So when you were a little girl, did you have an understanding and a knowing about your voice? What did you like about your voice?
Well, I laughed as you were describing how you were in your childhood. I was a talker. I was a talker. And I always saw myself as an extrovert because I did not, and people would always say I could never meet a stranger. Like I could walk up to someone, have a conversation with them as a kid, as well as into adulthood, walk up to a person and have a conversation with them as if I had known them all my life. Um, but yeah, I love to sing. Absolutely love to sing. Just would sing all the time. My brother and I used to have singing contests
Mm-hmm.
where, and not so much a contest, but I don't know, you remember the group Renee and Angela? Like we would
No, not
actually,
familiar.
oh, okay.
You're gonna have to
Yeah.
send me a clip later.
Yes, I will. I will. But yeah, we used to sing. We used to, just entertaining the family and just having fun, singing in the car, just always singing, always talking. Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
in that aspect, I just love to talk. Those are two things I was good at. I was not an athlete. I was not good at playing games. I was always like, just all the everyone else around me, my siblings, cousins, friends that I knew, they were good at so many other things, even academically. I mean, I was just kind of so talking. Yeah, that was
You got
me.
that down.
Yes, I had that down. Yeah, that came naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it came to actually just the execution, the using your voice, did you have an awareness about how you utilized it? Or is it just, you just talked, you just talked, you made connections, and that's what it was all about for you, and singing, and that's what it was all about?
No, yeah, no, I did not at all. I literally just talked and talked and talked. It just, I was just, I don't know if I was trying to find my way, maybe, and maybe that's where I was talking. And of course, this is just me, analyzing it, being on the back end, just analyzing it. But I don't know if that's what it was, because I was the youngest at the time. I have a younger sister, but at the time when I was a kid, I was a teenager when my sister was born. So, but coming up, I was the youngest. So I think that maybe that's why I talked so much,
Hmm.
trying to find my voice, and
In a
trying to.
big group in the
Right,
family.
I have three
Yeah.
older brothers, and yeah, it's you hear people talk about having siblings, and you know, doing something to be heard, to be seen and heard, because you have, they're boys, they're easily, it's easy for them to get attention, just because they're more boisterous, that different things like that. So I think maybe that was my way in, was talking. Hey, can I take
Mm.
and joking, all those different things. I think
Yeah.
that was just kind of why I talked so much. But I'm also a Gemini, and they known for, they're the great communicators.
Yeah.
They're
They,
the
they
great
they are
communicators.
deemed the great communicators, chatty, bubbly.
Yes,
I'm a cusp, right? I'm on the
yes,
cusp.
exactly, yes. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. People tell me that I seem more like a Cancer than I do a Gemini, but
Well, I remember when we first learned that, I was like, oh,
are
you
you
know. But
though?
again, and I believe I shared with you, my best friend is a Gemini, so, and she's also on the cusp. Hers is May 22nd, so I think that's the cusp of Taurus, I believe, if I'm
That's
not mistaken.
before. Is it before Gemini? It might be. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I thought that that was, but yes, and I just feel like when it comes to the Gemini sign, I fit it perfectly.
Hmm.
Definitely chatty.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Now, what did you like about your voice when you were younger?
So this was a time where when you heard a song on the radio, you would have your recorder ready, and as soon as they announced the song or the DJ stopped talking, you'd press record, and so you could get your favorite song, right? So I remember doing that, this one time, and I guess after the song went off, I hadn't pushed stopped, and I was talking, and I heard my voice for the first time recorded. Ugh, I cringed. It was like, do I sound like that? Like, I didn't, what I heard was not how I heard myself, Um, it was just this little scratchy voice. Like, it was just this little scratchy voice. I was like, do I sound like that? That's me. Um, uh, yeah. So I think that was my first, like, gosh, is that what I sound like? Again, me just being a talker, So family was always something. Girl, if you don't be quiet, girl, go sit down and somewhere and be quiet. And then, of course, even at school, I was constantly getting in trouble for talking all the time. Um, and I think ultimately, over time, it kind of had me go into a shell of myself, because everybody was telling me to be quiet, and I think, um, especially when it came to singing, of course, like I said, I was always singing. Music is very important to me, like it always has been, even when I was in the military. There were a lot of things that we could not have access to when we were in basic training, but like the one thing that I needed was my music. Like it was, and again, my music was my voice at the time, because we couldn't have radios or anything. But I had my voice again. I could sing. I could when I was frustrated or whatever it may have been that I was going through, I could sing a song. I could sing a gospel song that would cheer me up or whatever. But yeah, I think just over time, I realized that I was no longer the same person that I was. I wasn't that bubbly, chatty, person, because I was just kind of, and I think maybe it came from always being told to be quiet. Um, and I think if I'm really being honest, I would have to say that at that point I didn't know who I needed to be. If that makes sense. Like I didn't know who I was supposed to be if I wasn't. That's all I was known for. It's like was talking.
Mm,
So it's like if I couldn't talk, couldn't sing, I, I, I was always trying to fit into whoever I was around. I was trying to fit into whatever mold of how they could accept me, other than me
yeah.
being overly chatty.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of conformed, and what I'm hearing you say is that it's like you shrank your voice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Kind of
Yeah,
shrank it, hid it away so
yeah,
that you could appease other people.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely a good way of saying it. And again, of course, I didn't realize that then, but yeah, looking back on it, definitely, I believe that that's ultimately what I was doing and what I ended up doing.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm. Oh, so would you say that that carried through out grade school into high school and through graduating?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think definitely by the time I by the time I got to high school, I did not know who I was, and I think that that's probably normal for a lot of people. But
Oh,
because I was trying to fit in, and because I didn't really fit in middle school and going into high school, I was always getting into fights, and it wasn't me starting fights. It was just I think that I was angry and frustrated, didn't know who I was, didn't have my own sense of being, and didn't really have. I had one girlfriend that I was really close to, and got along with some other people, but just never really like clicked in. And I think that it was at a very young age I just realized that I I didn't fit in, and I didn't feel, I guess, accepted. I don't want to say the word accepted because that's not what it was. Um but yeah, just not knowing who I was, and it was like, well, I'm not like them, or I'm so yeah. And again, being always getting in trouble for talking. I was always The comment that I always got was, Marian is a great student. She makes good grades. She just talks too much. She interrupts other kids, that are trying to finish their work. So,
yeah.
again, even that from teachers, it was just like, and then I was getting in trouble at home because it was like, girl, I done told you, be quiet. You talk too much. So it was spilling over everywhere, that I was just talking too much. So I think I literally just became a shell of myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that high school is just such an awkward time
Oh yeah.
for most. I think a lot of people probably did a great job of kind of finding their group, their clique or what have you.
Hmm.
I personally
Hmm.
was a little bit of a floater. Like I can get along with everybody.
I like
Um
that word, floater.
yeah, I was a bit of a floater. I had a core friends. They actually happened to be a grade ahead of me, my core friends. So it's like,
Okay.
it's when I got out of classes, it's kind of passing through and seeing some of my other friends in their classes and saying hello and goodbye and all this stuff. For lunch, I could hop from one table to the other and still be, just cool with everybody. But it was for me definitely a time where I was unsure about my voice, but I utilized it enough and made sure that it was just in kindness or gentleness or,
Yeah.
just enough to kind of get by. But that
Yeah.
is a stage in life where absolutely you're looking across the crowd,
Yeah.
and you are trying to identify and relate. Where
Yeah.
do I belong? Am I like them, or are they more my people? Or I did know one thing: the loud, boisterous ones, they were not my people. I knew that out the gate. Anyone loud and boisterous, that's not for me. It's just too much.
You sound like my sister. My sister, I don't know, a couple of years ago, my sister said something similar to that. She was like, I'm just not people that are loud. I was like, actually, I said, if we weren't siblings, we would not be friends.
We cannot be friends.
She said, probably not. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah. But yeah, you bringing that up it just made me realize, like, I was, and I was definitely a floater. There were, groups of people, but I never felt comfortable in my own skin, you know, and never really had a voice. And I think, to the point of just kind of, again, being quiet enough to know what this group, and it's like, okay, I can say this, I can be this way in front of them. I can't be that way in front of this group. It was like that.
Right. Code
Yeah.
switching. I think we learned code switching very early on, didn't we?
Yes. My
Yeah.
God. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not necessarily code switching, due to any ethnicity
Yeah.
group. It is also just cultural code switching. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Did you ever get teased or made fun of for your voice outside of you talking too much? Was there anything ever deeper than that, or was that enough for you to just kind of mute yourself and stifle your
Yeah.
voice?
I mean, I don't think I was ever teased for my voice necessarily. I was, just, again, if I was singing or, you know, I was just always being told to be quiet, but I was never teased about my voice outside of as an adult. Like, I mean, even now, if I get a call, yes, Mr. Mills, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Oh,
And matter of
yeah.
fact, that was actually, I think, one of the first times that I learned to change my voice because I would talk like this to make sure
Yeah.
that they knew that they were talking to a female. Anytime I would get on the phone, I would automatically soften my
Bring your
voice.
pitch
Just
up. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure that I sounded
Yeah.
feminine and not like this.
Yeah.
Since this, but and I used to get so mad. I'm like, I'm not a man. Like I know I had. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And again, it's businesses. Sometimes it's even my doctor's office.
Right.
Yeah, yes. Can I speak to Mr. Mills? And I'm like, are you not looking at my name? And I understand
Right.
that there's my high school principal's name was Marion, and he was a
Mm-hmm.
man, but he
Mm.
spelled his name with an O. But it's like you don't take the time to just scan, like, okay, let me see,
Is
Mr.
this a
Mills.
Mr. or Mrs., female, male,
Right,
what have you?
right.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, like I said, never was teased about my voice, but just feeling self conscious when I heard myself as my own recording, and then
Mm-hmm.
being older when people thought. Matter of fact, you know what? I just remembered. Um, I can't remember how old I was. I think I was like teenager, maybe, yeah, maybe 18, 19. I was still, it was in the military, but I think I had gone home and my boyfriend called me and my brother was on the phone for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, girl, telephone, you know. And as soon as I got on the phone, he was like, oh, he said, you sound just like your brother. I was talking to your brother. I thought that was you. And I'm like, that part, right? Like, but again, it's like, it just again took me like, how do people hear me? That my
Right.
own boyfriend thought that I was, and you know what? Now, good Lord, now that I think about it, another time I was on the phone and I was talking to a friend of mine, and his daughter or son, I don't even remember, was on the phone. He was like, Daddy, was that a male or a female? Is that a man or a woman or something like that? Whatever. And I was, and again, so it wasn't necessarily being teased or made fun of. It's like, I think, like, even your voice, I think a lot of times people just get so used to this high pitched voice when it comes to being a woman. So when they hear something deeper, it's like, now mind you, whew, I used to smoke and drink. So my voice was probably no, it's no probably. I know it was even deeper then. And
Yeah.
first thing in the
Yeah.
morning, I was probably sounding something like this.
Right.
Like, hey Michelle, how you doing?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
seriously. So
Especially
that,
with smoking. Yes.
yes. So that probably didn't help either. So
Mm-hmm.
all of
Mm-hmm.
that played a part in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have those thoughts sometimes too. I mean, I get complimented. Don't get me wrong. People compliment me on my voice.
Hmm.
It was probably a couple of times I've been mistaken as a man because I have like an alto type of voice. Um, but it doesn't happen too often. But I
Yeah.
still think about it. Just as a woman, I
Of
still think
course.
about it because you look at Hollywood. You look at what's portrayed on a lot of commercials when it has to do with anything feminine, it's usually a higher pitched voice
It is.
woman.
Yeah.
The octave is typically higher as well.
Mhm.
So, if anything, I guess we could look at it as training ground for who we've become today
Oh,
with our
absolutely.
voice acting,
You know what? I
right?
remember even telling my sister years ago. I remember telling my sister, I wish I had her voice. Like I wish that I had, because she just has this really soft, just this really,
Demure,
and again, it just and I was like grown when I said this to her, so it just shows just how traumatized I was and still
right?
was,
Yeah.
that I was, as an adult saying, I'm not comfortable in my own skin. I'm not, with my
Mm,
own voice, that I wish I had your voice, that it was softer and gentler, so
yeah.
because
Yeah.
of course I've been accused of being aggressive when I wasn't, just
Right.
because I have such a
Right.
strong voice,
Because it is deep.
yes,
Yeah, I think
yes.
that happens a lot too. I
Hmm.
get in trouble because my humor tends to kind of lean toward sarcasm a lot of times.
Right,
It can be dry or sarcastic. And so I believe if I had a softer voice, a higher pitched
right,
voice, maybe the sarcasm could be picked up a little easier, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
I would
Hmm.
just, I would probably seem less intimidating if that were the case.
Right. Yeah.
But we are who we are. We
That's
are who
it.
we are. Yeah.
Hmm.
When do you think you made the decision, you know what? And we still carry those things. We're talking about it right now. We both sometimes wish that our voices were a little bit more feminine. And as actresses, we can make it that way if we need to. But there was a time in which I decided, you know what? This is my voice. I'm going to own it. And now I'm going to start putting it to work. When
Right.
was that moment for you?
Mm. You know, I don't know if it's sadly. I don't know if I would say sadly or that it's a blessing, but
Mm,
probably within the last couple of years, and
okay,
and
past
that's
two
that's no
years.
lie. Like it's wow, I'm getting emotional. And I wasn't expecting to. It wasn't until I got paid for my voice, like literally, like it was. And then as it grew, and people would compliment me on my voice, and like, oh my god, like when I as soon as I heard your voice, we knew that we wanted you, and I just realized how um, as different as it is, that it tells a story without doing much. Like if that makes sense, and I know that you understand that, but yeah, it's like I can um, it carries a weight with it that um, can tell a story in a way that someone else may have to put a lot of emphasis on words. Where and again, it's literally been since I became a voiceover artist that people, and I'm just like, wow, this is the voice that I've always had. Like this is what it does to people. This is what, how it resonates with people. So I was telling someone, a coach recently, that I don't say that I like my voice. I can honestly say that I've learned to appreciate my voice. Since becoming a voiceover artist, because I mean, even as before I quit my job as a social worker, I was getting in trouble for talking to clients too long. As a CPS, I was a CPS worker, and I was still getting in trouble for talking, so it's like my mouth was always getting me in trouble. So to hear someone appreciate it, and I will never forget the first time I got paid for, it was a very short, script, and I was like, wow, this is like someone just paid me to, someone just paid me to talk. I was like, look at God, like look at God. How, and I even told my mom. I'll never forget. I told my mom. I said, "Mom, I said, isn't it funny how I used to get in trouble all the time, for talking too much, and here it is now. I'm getting paid for it."
Yep. Yeah.
My mom always told us that God has a sense of humor, but I don't even think it's a sense of humor for him when it comes to my
In this
voice.
context, it's not about,
Yeah,
he's not
but
being
yeah, it is.
funny necessarily. Yeah.
But I think for everyone else, it's like, dang, that girl found something to use that talking, But
That's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were in social work for so long. That just requires you to connect with people, to use your voice, to ask questions, to counsel, to care, to express empathy. And I think that is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful use of your voice. But then it turned into becoming a voice actor. Why do you think that our Heavenly Father called you to become a voice actor in the last couple of years? Like, why that? What do you think? Have you thought about it? Have you ever considered it?
That's actually a good question. I've never thought about it in that context. When I was in the military, these ladies were praying over me, and they were doing the clap, and they were like, oh, praise him, praise him, praise him, thank him, just thank him, just thank him. And I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And they were like, baby, praise him. God is going to use you. And I was like, oh, that the thought of that is scary. Like they were like, why? And I was like, I, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up. And again, no, me knowing who I was and where I was, and again, just not knowing the future, but just looking at who I was then, it was like, what am I gonna? How can He use me? Um, and and the lady told me, she was like, he's gonna, he'll supply you with whatever it is that you need. And she said, just continue to praise him. And I was like, I don't really have that much to thank him for. She was like, oh, she was like, don't say that. And I was like, well, my mom, always told us that, God knows our heart, so, he knows our heart. So me saying how I feel, he already knows, my heart. But in saying that, in looking back, I think that those feelings, coming up and even as a kid, as an adolescent, as a young adult, just not knowing who I was, and I never imagined. But again, God already knew. He's the author and the finisher of our faith. So He already knows. And I just believe that everything that I've been through, as you were just saying, speaks to the voice that I have. It's the compassion, and again, I always I thought that my calling was to be a social worker, to help people, to counsel them, to have the compassion, so many different things, and situations that I saw with my clients. Um, I was very familiar with a lot of those situations, um, in one way or another, and the mental illness, so that compassion, and that's why I believed I was created to be a social worker. Matter of fact, my motto used to be, I don't just have a degree in social work. Like that's who God created me to be. A very caring, compassionate, all those different things. Um, but I believe that all of the ups, downs, the hills, the valleys, God was shaping my voice. Like literally shaping who I was and how I would build my voice. And I love the way that you formed your question, because when I was getting my bank account, from my business bank account, as the lady was gathering the information and typing in the information, she said, how did you decide to get into that? From going from social work to voiceover. I said, I didn't. And it's true. I did not decide to be a voiceover artist. And that is the God honest truth. I people have been telling me, that I have a very strong voice, and this is like over the last uh, couple of years. Like I remember, I was at an at an elementary school. I was at an elementary school site. It was raining. The kids were in the gym. It was like 35 kids, and a mother walked in, and she was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I was like, "Oh my God, what was the last thing that I said?" She was like, "I cannot believe this." I was like, "Jesus, what was the last thing I said? Did I say something in the wrong way?" And again, this was in a very hoity-toity area of town. So I was afraid that it was like, oh my God, I should probably felt like I was being too aggressive with the kids, or whatever. Because it was like, okay, we're gonna do blah 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 blah. Okay, you get everyone got it. All right, good. Type of thing. So and this lady, she said, I thought you guys were outside. She said, I have two children and I can't get them to be quiet. How do you have 35 kids quiet in the gym? Like, but again, so that started when I was working at the YMCA. So again, people, we talked about how strong and all these different things about my voice. But again, I still felt self-conscious about my voice. But I went to a gospel concert December of 2018. And I had been to John P. Key concerts. Anytime that he's in the area, I try to go because I love John P. Key. I was able to meet him, and I told him, I was like, "I'm your biggest fan. Our birthday is a day apart. Like we are one. Like seriously." And he was like, "You're my biggest fan of." So we kind of joked a little bit, and he said, "I can't remember if he said, I know he said that I had a powerful voice, I had a strong voice, and I needed to do something with it. I don't remember if he said you should do voiceover or you should look into doing something with your voice, but he told me to get a card from one of his people. He called him over and gave me a card, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God." And I remember reaching out and emailing the guy, and never heard anything back, never heard anything back. And I was like,
Hmm.
it just kind of played back. I was like, okay, look at all the different people. My aunt, I'm sorry, I don't even think I said this. My aunt had been listening to books on tapes for years. Like that's she still calls it that because that's how long she's been
Right.
listening to them.
Yeah.
I used to talk her to sleep. Like in my 20s, she would call me and get me to talk her to sleep
Mm-hmm.
because I was the talker, and
Yeah.
that's what I could do. I could talk her to sleep. So, and she used to tell me all the time, she was like, "You have a really good voice for this." And again, me not being comfortable with my voice, I was just like,
Right.
"Oh, okay." I was like,
Well,
"I
that's
don't really."
nice. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right. That
Yeah.
yes, yes. So it was
Thanks.
like, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. But no, and again, in that moment when John P. Key told me that I should do something with my voice, it's like all of these people that were telling me, you have a powerful voice. You have a very recognizable voice. You have,
Mm.
you have a very distinct voice. All those different things. I went out. I think the next couple of weeks, I actually contacted a local studio and recorded my first demo, and that introduced me to being um, to being coached. I started being, the
Yeah.
guy gave me a local coach, and I started coaching with him in the next few months. But I say all of that to say that I was doing that because although I loved social work, um, I didn't have a life outside of social work. I was
Mm-hmm.
literally working all day, coming home, trying to play catch up on my notes on the weekends, in the evening. So I just did not have a life. And when I looked at voiceover, it gave me a life outside of social work.
Mm.
It
Mm-hmm.
gave me something to do. And
Yeah.
I've always been a creative person, and that got pushed up under the rug with being told, "Don't act like that. Okay, come on, like don't be like that."
Mm.
I'll never forget. I actually had a job interview, got the job, sitting down talking to my coworker. Hey, you know how I am, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
you're just talking. The supervisor walked by as we're having lunch. She literally walked by, never stopped. She said, "I promise y'all, she wasn't like that there in the interview." And again, it just made me like, "Oh,
Shrink,
I'm familiar with this. Let
stifle.
me calm
Yeah.
down. Let me make sure that
Mm.
I'm extremely professional
Mm.
and
Yeah.
just make sure that I'm one way." I do know how to be professional. That
You
I can do.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that so that and I was like in my 30s then.
Yeah.
But still, just I was like, okay, oh, I got to calm down. Yeah, I can't be me. I can't be big. And honestly, In saying that, when started in social work, I think it took me a year and a half. I quit my job in October, November of 2021, moved back here, and was doing stuff around the house, getting the house together. And I did not do anything in voiceover until uh, November of 2022. But it took a year. It wasn't until 2023, and probably over the last 6 to 3 months, even now, that I felt comfortable being me. Like, a lot of people are like, Marian, you know how you are right now? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, that's how we want you to be on the microphone. I said, I don't know how to do that, because as soon as I got in front of the microphone, I was like, okay, this is how you read the script, because I have to be professional right now. This I'm working. And they were like, it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to relax. And I was like, I don't know how. Like, as soon as you're like, okay, action, it was like, I automatically, okay. It was performance time. I know how to do that. I know how to do that very well. So I did not know. And I had a coach recently, a part of his coaching, he would ask, like, who are you? Who would you say that you are? And I said, if you had asked me that 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, I still would not know. Voiceover has shown me and taught me who I am and who I've always been. But again, I she was constantly, tucking herself away, and was lost, like, for years, because I can't remember the last time I was myself, at work. Of course, I would, could laugh and joke, but for the most part, just me being me, and the creative side of me, and um, I lost all of that. And when I started in voiceover, sometimes I would get stuck on a script or just couldn't connect with it. I would go outside, play in my garden, look at my hummingbirds, just do something, and just being outside and just having those creative juices flowing. It, I'm like, that's it. I'd come back in the booth, record it with no problem. And I realized that that was something that was lost, in all the different jobs, and just, as from kid, from childhood all the way up, where I lost who I truly was and lost my voice, because um, I had to, like, as you said earlier, just I had to conform, So yeah, it's very interesting. I God always knew, and I everything, it just came full circle, as far as how everything was supposed to work out, because all of the different things that I've been through, all of that speaks to the voice that I have now, So how they say, like, you had to go around John Yard's barn, but you know it is, you got here,
This conversation was split into two parts to give you space to pause, process, and return when you're ready. We hope that you will return to listen to part two with care. Thanks for tuning in to Seen, Heard, Imagined. I ask that you please consider sending a small donation to express your support and desire for content that draws you closer to our creator. To donate, visit our website or check out the link below. Thanks for watching and listening.